As you can see, this session doesn't include just me. Actually, it will be followed up by Andrius and Tim, but I'm sure we'll have a bit of an introduction, so you'll learn what's going to happen next. But I will begin with the Baltic Startup Funding Report. So this is a report that we produce every year, collecting a lot of sensitive and unique data points from founders and investors. So we pick up the phone, we call every founder, we ask them, how much capital have you raised, what were the terms, and we have the most up-to-date data that no other platform like Dealroom or Crunchbase will ever have. So I'm going to present the most important bits of that research with you, for you today. So let's begin with like a general overlook of the Baltic ecosystem. Lithuania, my home country, has done incredibly well this year. Startups in Lithuania have raised 240 million euros and had a record year in terms of exits. 11 exits happened in Lithuania, bringing back capital both for founders and for investors. We've also asked local funds who are the top founders, who are they most excited about, who they think will be the next unicorn companies. And you can see 3 names that have come up the most frequently, and that's Copa AI, Ovoko, and AceWaves. If you don't know them yet, make sure to follow. These guys are really amazing. Now, let's zoom in into Latvia. Latvian startups last year have raised 76 million euros and had 3 new funds opened, which is the best news for early stage founders who are looking for their first investor. So 60 million of fresh dry powder is here in Latvia available for companies. And yeah, I'm going to share a little bit more on the funds later, but probably you know them. It's Outlast Fund, Bad Ideas Fund, and Build It. And here are the top 3 Latvian startups to watch. Handwave, Birdie Chat, and Spotwise. I actually saw some of the founders of those companies in TechChill today. So, you can grab them, you can ask them, what is it that you're building? Why is it so cool? Why investors love it? Estonia, the leader of the Baltics. Year over year, Estonians are raising most capital in the Baltics. That's the reality. We Lithuanians and Latvians, we just have to do better. We have to catch up. So Estonians this year raised almost half of all the funding in the Baltics, 300 million, and saw good growth in pre-seed investing as well. So 2 times more pre-seed deals happened in Estonia this year, which is great news because in order to have more Series A rounds, more later stage companies, we just need that big pipeline of early stage startups. And again, 3 Estonian companies that you probably heard about. I think Pactum for sure. They raised the largest round this year in Estonia, but also Dr. House and Sarah, someone that you should watch if you're interested in Estonian companies. Right, now let's dive a little bit deeper into the numbers, and I want to share some data with you. So bear with me if it's too technical. It's just going to be a short overview. So overall, startups in the Baltics have raised over 600 million euros. You can see that overall funding has stabilized after the peak in 2021 and 2022, the super cycle year. And if we look at the number of rounds, it has increased slightly, but overall there is a bit of a downward going trend. And this is interesting because startups have raised 100 million more than they did in the previous year, but the round size has increased only by 10 deals. So this means that there is capital concentration, that founders are raising more money, and in general, we're becoming more mature as an ecosystem, catching up to some of the players in the new Nordics. I get asked quite often, what are the top verticals in Baltics? What are people building in? And you can see that there is no consistent picture. Every year, it's a different vertical that's dominating, and 2025 has been the year of AI for sure, both in the number of capital raised, but also in the total deal count. So we are expecting that to stay, and we think that 2026 will also probably be the year of AI, but also perhaps of defense, because we see more founders building in defense and also more defense funds opening up. Okay, now the heavy data. If we dive even deeper into the round sizes, we did some calculations of like what are the median pre-seed round sizes in the Baltics. So at the moment, it's about €500,000 that is being raised at about like 4.5 million euro valuation. Of course, there are rounds that are bigger, that are smaller, some outliers, but in general, this is the median round size. And here you can see that Lithuanians and Estonians raise at very similar valuations. So companies are just as expensive at pre-seed. In seed, the overall trend is a bit more stable, and the round sizes aren't increasing as much. The median round size is about 1.5 million euros at the seed stage, and the median valuation is about 12 million euros. And here, Estonians are leading the way. We've also collected data on the highest rounds that have happened across all stages in the Baltics. So this doesn't include some of the non-public deals. So not all the deals that we know of are presented here because we just couldn't include them. But for sure, you know some of the names. You've seen those companies. You probably saw them in the news. And the largest growth rounds that we should all be very proud of are Pactum, Irons in Latvia, and Kastaja in Lithuania that also became the 5th Lithuanian unicorn last year. All right, so for the first time, we also did some research on the founders. We've never done this before, and we wanted to know what is the typical profile of a funded founder in the Baltics. So not necessarily the one who is building, but someone who received funding last year. And this is the data. You can see that it is very heavily dominated by male founders. That's still the reality, and it's a global trend. Most of the founders fall into the category of 26 to 35-year-olds, so millennials, and a lot of Lithuanian founders, which I was very happy about, but quite surprised. Something that worries me, though, is that there are more foreign founders than Latvian founders that have raised funding. And for the Latvian founders in the room, this is your chance to change the statistic for next year. Make sure to build, get funded, and make your dream a reality. We've also analyzed the education profile, and we can see that a lot of the founders have bachelor degrees and master degrees. They even have degrees in multiple fields, and about 36% of them have studied abroad. This was also super insightful to look at the experience of the founders. What was maybe the most interesting is that almost half of the founders that have raised funding have founded a startup before. So they had experience of building a company, and 12% had experience of exiting a startup. So I think that's just a reality. We don't have too many exited founders in the Baltics yet, but every year this data is becoming better and better, as you will see, and the exit situation is improving. We also checked what's the typical setup of a founding team, and this is probably not surprising, but most of the funded founders, they have about 2 to 3 people in the founding team. Usually, it's the CEO who's taking care of the business, the CTO taking care of the product, and maybe also a third person coming with some specific industry experience or leading a specific field in the company. Something that was the highlight of 2025 are the builder houses or the hacker houses. It's a new trend, a wave that we have seen in Europe and also in the Baltics, with these builder houses launching to help people get going, get started. Maybe you have an idea, you don't know how to start, you need some support. This is where you go to get that help. So it all started with base space in Lithuania and then expanded to Estonia with Room and lately with Shipyard in Latvia. So, if you're a young, new founder, you need some help, this is your place to go. The community, the knowledge, the support, the mentorship is there. Very briefly, to talk about the investors. Here are the most active investors in the Baltics. We calculated this based on the number of deals that the funds have participated in. So at the pre-seed and seed stage, some of the names that might be familiar to you. And very happy also to have foreign VC funds that have done more than one deal at both pre-seed and seed. So exciting to bring in some international capital. But even more importantly, those international funds are funding companies at later stages. So at pre-seed and seed, it's mostly the locals that are covering the ground, but then seed and Series A+, almost 40%, more than 40% of the capital is actually coming from international VCs, including some tier 1 funds like Index, Early Bird, Dawn Capital, or Balderton. And I mentioned that there was a lot of fresh capital raised in the Baltics in 2025. So these are the funds overall that brought nearly 300 million of fresh capital that's available to you, founders. So there was never a better time to build a company, in my opinion. And just final bit from my side, the exits. Last year was an incredible year for Baltics in terms of exits, 25 exits. We haven't seen that ever before. And this was mostly driven by a massive increase in exits in Lithuania, with 11 companies being exited. And here we've listed all of them out. So some nice companies that you probably know. I think in Estonia, Ready Player Me was probably the most exciting exit, a company that was acquired by Netflix. So really something that was in the news. And if you follow what's happening in the startup world, you saw it for sure. So that's it. Thanks so much for listening. If you want to dive deeper, you can find the report on the websites of FIRSTPICK and Practica Capital. And always feel free to ping myself or Tim, who's going to come on stage, if you want to discuss some of the numbers or our methodology. Thanks for spending those 10 minutes with me, and enjoy the rest of TechChill.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andra. This was super insightful, guys. If you will be working on raising the next round, just go back to the survey, go back to the report. It's available online. Check it, and it will give a decent kind of guidelines or on where to land, basically. But raw data is one thing, but we need stories. So, Alisa, how do we follow up?
Exactly. We need a story. So we're going to hear from an investor and a founder. So I'm welcoming on the stage Tim Vaino, investor from Practica Capital, as well as Andrius Slimas, co-founder of Saltz. Round of applause. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello, hello, hello. Is it working?
Hi there.
Yeah. Quick comments. First one is that, the hackerspaces. So now we can proudly say that one team from from Base Space and Room have been actually accepted to YC program. So it's quite significant, and I think Shipyard's you're next. So let's produce even more teams from here. And secondly, one thing to kind of introduce the panel would be that one thing that came apparent in the report was the fact that we're producing a lot of pre-seed, we're producing a lot of seed, but then you have a bit of a gap of graduating to Series A. And I think historically we've done better, but now we're not that strong. So first of all, well done for yourselves and Saltz to overcome this step. You raised 20 million in your Series A investment now.
That's correct.
And kind of following up on this, I just want to pick your brain and kind of get your opinion on maybe give some insights, what founders should be preparing, what are the bottlenecks, what are the investor expectations, and so on. So briefly, I'll give you a word for small introduction and what the Saltz do.
Okay.
So set the tone.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So my name is Andrius. I'm from Vilnius. Our story started in 2016 when we built a company called Oberlo, which we sold to Shopify. We worked at Shopify for 4 years, saw how things are done at like a big global company. We left 4 years ago, and 3 years ago we started Saltz, which is a marketplace for food trading, and we have we have a pan-European marketplace, and we have also the logistics infrastructure that powers everything. I think that's relevant to this conversation because we did not have a strong AI angle to this. So yeah, we have a marketplace, a vanilla marketplace, which is connecting fragmented markets with also like a very real-world logistics infra underneath it.
So what matters? I mean, you're preparing for Series A,
Yeah.
tough times, especially with you, with all of the AI, hitting the hitting the service. So, what was it that mattered the most? Were it numbers, the narrative? Where did you spend the most time to prepare in order to serve from the
Right.
strongest position?
Yeah, I think, I mean, so obviously the more mature you are, the more the numbers are important, and the storytelling goes, to the second plan. So that's obviously true, but if you are also not really matching the vibe of the day, the trend, then I mean, then the storytelling is almost irrelevant. Like it all starts with the numbers. So actually, I guess after two of the conversations, I realized that even the structure, we always starting with explaining who we are, and then I realized how irrelevant this is in our case. So like our first slide was, this is our GMV, this is our revenues, this is where we're going to be in 2 years' time. This is what we do. So we had to change, obviously. So I think Series A is already a time when you have to show that the business is working, show that the big prize is there somewhere, and then show like how are you patching these two parts. So that's like already a starting point. And like if you're not following into the trend bucket of the day, yeah, then it's the only thing that actually matters. If you like really blow them out of the water with the numbers, that's it.
What was maybe one thing that you overestimated or kind of over-prepared for while preparing the fundraise, and what was the thing that you under-prepared for, which you didn't expect to become so important?
Yeah, I guess I didn't expect how prevalent that trend is, and how much there is of a group thinking in the industry. So I mean, it was clear in the beginning, at the earliest stages, that people would do that. It's a shortcut. Okay, you kind of, there's very little hard data, so you need some sort of heuristics to think as an investor how to choose that. But I assumed at the later stages, there would be a lot of people who would look very deep and analyze. And in reality, yeah, there were a lot of funds who wouldn't even start the conversation if you don't fall immediately into that bucket. So yeah, I think I underestimated that. And in our case, we just maybe lost a little bit of time. We could have just went to the people who we know are slightly, with a different approach. So I think that's the only thing. But other than that,
And overestimated?
yeah, well, our ability to to quickly close the round. It went a bit longer.
How long was it from A to Z?
3 months. I mean, we had like the end of year, so it was a bit nuanced.
That's not too long, though, is it?
Well, my expectation was to do this in 2 weeks. So I had like back-to-back 2 weeks. I felt like I'm gonna come in, talk, for 8 hours a day, and then we're gonna move to the next stage. And then I realized, oops, like I made some, wrong assessments, and then it turned out to be a bit longer, and then we had to kind of change a bit the profile of the funds and so on, who were actually willing to look into something which does not have, AI from left and center. So yeah.
A good example of high standards. 3 months for Series A, I think it's a very solid result in the end of the day. So,
Well, this is my first Series A, so I didn't know.
looking into investor side now, what did you feel that maybe was the most exciting for the investors? Obviously AI, but maybe to form it in a bit stronger manner. So, what got them excited the most, and what did they spend time on looking into the most?
In our case, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, in our case, so it's almost like our blessing and our curse was the same thing. So we are operating in a very, very big market. So it's a food trade, like the regular companies are doing, like free traditional companies in Europe do 50 billion, in the States it's like 200 billion, the 3 top companies. So it's a massive industry, and it's completely undigitalized. So there's no player. So that was sort of the reason why somebody actually cared to look into this and spend time and so on. So this was I guess the driver for our round, and people who ultimately looked deep into this, they realized that you actually the prize is massive, and you have some decent chances to do that. So this was what was exciting people. And in terms of the sort of what they were scrutinizing, I think that's again true across the board. the the more understandable your startup is, the more they're gonna drill you, right? Or grill you and drill deep into the numbers, right? So if you come in and you say, oh, okay, we have, I don't know, like whatever, we're building something for HR. Oh yeah, I know HR. My questions are, or it was the same for logistics. If you come in and you say biotech, and they're like, oh, biotech, yeah, go. And so I think AI is partly in that area. We're like, yeah, AI, and I have my questions ended here. So I think in our case, yeah, we were grilled on every single number, unit economics, retention. They were calling everybody and so on, which obviously was a good thing. But yeah, the more understandable the thing is that you're building, the more people will have opinions and will have various degree of how informed those opinions are.
And it's also very interesting because I assume the companies that are reaching Series A now, they started before the whole AI boom. So they have to adapt quite a lot.
Yeah.
In your case, how did this adaptability look like? Obviously, the expectation was to have some layer of AI or kind of tie it in the game. How did you tackle this and how did you maybe implement this in order to have this strong position?
Yeah, so I mean, I think in general, like if you're not deploying AI, maybe you probably wouldn't be talking with anybody anyhow. So I think we are using AI and been using AI way before that, and we didn't do we didn't put AI number, AI word in the slides because of that. We were using this because it creates value. But I'm of the opinion that like you have to do whatever it takes within obviously legally permissible boundaries. You have to do whatever it takes to to win, so to raise capital. And if the zeitgeist of the day requires you to mention blockchain or mention sustainability or now mention AI, then you go and mention AI. I was at the hardware store and there was a fridge, and that fridge had AI on it. And it said that like this is AI-driven fridge. So like if the fridge seller has to put AI on the doors, I'm going to put AI on my slide. So we had AI on our slides, just as some sort of like a door opener in some of these basic conversations. We're like, okay, yeah, you are thinking about AI, so tick. Let's talk now.
Do you honestly think that if you wouldn't have put it on the slides, it would have had some negative impact or slowed you down? Or?
I don't think so, but again, I think there's a lot of shortcuts in the industry, right? So when you're having these initial conversations, people have like, well, you should tell us, but people have like the checklist that they have to mark, right? So AI is one on the top. So they say AI, all right, here we go. Second time founder, okay. So I think big market, small market, okay. So I think just sort of as a sanity thing to do, you have to mention that you are using AI. And again, like if you are not using AI, you should not, you don't deserve to win or to exist.
I think the word of AI has been mentioned too many times already during this speech, and I think the whole stage.
Yeah.
But looking a bit, kind of giving perspective, if you look at the Baltics founder, what do you think, or why do you think it's so difficult to graduate? What is one thing that is missing, maybe, in your opinion?
Yeah.
What can we improve, or founders can improve in order to raise the statistics and do this more?
Yeah, I think this is a very important question, and I think an important thing to talk and think about. For me, it was a big realization. I guess I made a conclusion that our biggest problem of the region is our humbleness and our sort of grounded realism. So when we are thinking about something, we are like not delusional, right? When you go to the States, people are talking about everything they touch is like a GDP moving idea, right? So they are selling these kind of ideas. And we oftentimes really narrow down our ambitions. Even at the pre-seed stage, at the founding stage, right? We look and we think about some edge cases that we are solving, or something that can have an upside of like 100 million in revenue or 500 million in revenue. And if we think, from our sort of region's perspective and our history and so on, if you build a company that generates 500 million in revenue, that's amazing, but it's thinking small. World doesn't need companies generating 500 million in revenue. We need, companies generating 5 billion in revenue. And I think this is actually a big sort of like self-induced issue that we have in this region, that we are solving some problems on the fringes or thinking small. And we actually did this mistake ourselves when we started raising the fund, the money. We were talking with the funds, and we were saying, okay, we're thinking in the increment. So I want to, over this period, we're going to reach 100 million in GMV, and then from there, like I'll think, and it was like, okay, it's not interesting, And then we completely regrouped, and we said, okay, so if the three companies are, doing 50 billion in revenue, so this is our starting point, and then we reverse engineer from there, and like it actually helped with the funding, but it also helped in our own understanding about the things, right? Like not focusing on, or like thinking about like the ultimate big state, and then reverse engineering your way to today and how you're gonna get there. Because if you're thinking about like the next milestone of 100 million or something, then you're like potentially focusing on a local maxima, and maybe there's no connection to this big thing. So for me, it's like the big realization is like, yeah, I know we are humble, we are realist, but sometimes we just need to get a bit more dilutional, and this is what we started doing with this round.
Just to make sure I understand correctly, so basically what you're saying is not to kind of predict next step through, are going to be there, but to see the bigger picture and roll back to have more kind of realistic next step.
I mean, I think there are three aspects of this. So one problem is even when you found the company, you found something that solves something very small, right? Or the whole industry, even if you're like completely annihilate the industry, it's just going to be limited upscale. Maybe good for you, but limited in general, right? So that's one thing. Or you go after the big industry, but you say, if I reach 100 mil, that's going to be great. Or you are planning in the very small increments without having this big connection to the ultimate state, which we did. And I think that's the third sort of manifestation of this problem. But just general, thinking small is a problem. You have to think really, really big. And also you have to keep in mind that people discount whatever you say. So you're going to say, I'm going to reach a billion in GMV in terms of like a marketplace. People are going to discount this and cut it in half and say, okay, okay, so if you say you're going to reach a billion, then maybe you're going to reach 200. And if you say you're going to do that in 3 years, then maybe it's actually 10 years, and then my opportunity cost. So like everything that you're going to say is going to be discounted, and all of the competition in the Western world, they inflate their numbers. So like I think this is potentially a fatal mistake.
But where's the line? I mean, it's very easy to oversell like this as well, or kind of to work under overpromise and under-deliver, not the vice versa.
I mean, so the missing piece, it's not that you only say a number and then you leave it at there. You have to have also a believable path towards that, right? So for us, we had a smaller number and a believable path to that, and then when we realized that small number actually doesn't, it doesn't get any attention, and we realized that we need to talk about number way further in the distance and much larger, and then we had to spend months working backwards in actually having a believable strategy how we would achieve that.
Okay. And getting back to the buzzwords, we just have to AI. Let's forget the pitch deck and let's forget the slides and presentation to the investors. How do you, as quite established company, try to improve yourself? How do you basically look at the picture and say, okay, this is the area where we can actually use AI and improve. Let's start from here. How do you make those decisions? Where to start, how to implement, and how do you prioritize?
Okay. We obviously do a lot of things, and it helps us on the growth side and so on. But I guess everybody's now using Claude, and engineers are moving significantly faster. And probably for the first time in the history of software development, product managers are the bottleneck. So it's actually not the execution which is a bottleneck, which has always been, but what do you need to build? What is sort of the business strategy and so on becomes a bottleneck. It's crazy. So, but anyways, this is a simple thing. I guess everybody's going through this. But one thing that we've done 4 months ago, which had a tremendous impact on our operations. So we decided that every single team, so HR, finance, whatever, legal compliance and so on, we have logistics team and so on, they're going to own, build, and develop their own tools. So our engineering team builds the sort of the scaffolding, the basic platform for, let's say, HR. And then every single HR person would have a Claude, the most expensive Claude subscription, and they would vibe code their own features. So what happens is that the team who uses the tool on the daily basis and know what they want, they are never now limited by engineering team who never going to prioritize their work. They know what they save time on this communication. They can get whatever, new reports, new exported stuff, new features, new data manipulate, whatever they want within hours. They just talk together. So we have like now these internal systems. We were a little bit hesitant initially, but now our finance team has their own, and they are just vibe coding whatever they need for the time being. The logistic team has the same thing. The HR team has the same thing, and it's crazy how efficient and how quick they are, and how robust that those systems are. Obviously, we had to invest a lot in the sort of the guardrails, so is building the foundation, and then having a pretty strict sort of continuous integration steps afterwards once they release something, because we check for security potential issues and so on. So we have like a review steps that are automated afterwards. But like people with no technical experiences are launching their own tools, and it's really, really, really changed the dynamics on the operational side of the business.
It's very interesting. I mean, in your experience, because these are quite internal things that are not maybe seen from the outside, is this also something that you can sell to the investors while fundraising as positive impact of AI to the company, or they don't buy it?
I don't think so. I think the investors are interested in AI as something that you sell that is top line affecting, right? A lot of companies are using AI to reduce their OPEX and so on, so like optimize some. And I think investors generally are not interested in that side, right? They're not interested in the fact that your support is now 3 times cheaper. They're interested, can you use AI to 10x your revenue in the next 3 months or so? So I think, I guess it wouldn't help us. It helps us a lot in terms of our competition and so on, who have to employ tens of thousands of people to do the same thing that we do without people, right? So it helps in that sense, but I think for investors it didn't really matter.
And for the last question from my side, maybe what would be the final message to all of the founders who are preparing, let's say general fundraise, not maybe Series A, but general fundraise during those crazy, hectic, competitive AI times?
I don't know if I really have like a silver or golden bullet or silver bullet that would, be the right answer. I think it's just really thinking big as a starting point, using all of the tools available, not playing the game of startups, NVCs, maybe not thinking necessarily about raising and so on, just thinking what is the problem, how you solve it. Now you have so many tools to do this without external funding, without million employees and so on. So like really just focusing on the problem, on the solution, not playing the game, and pushing this forward. I think
All right.
it's really doable, really doable.
Well, thanks a lot for this short but very insightful talk. Baltic Funding Report, Practica Capital, FIRSTPICK websites, and go check out Saltz app to stay up to date with the coolest startup from the region.
Right,
Thank you.
Thank you.